what's happened to the Android phone hardware ecosystem, right? I mean,
it's fucked.
I'm so confused by this debate.
It's okay. You guys can disagree. This is healthy.
I can't wait for you to be stuck on principle wearing an Asus headset and having spyware all over your face.
Hey, friends, what's cooking?
Well,
Hello.
Should I tell them about the tree?
I think we should tell them about the tree. But before, let me say a welcome back to More or Less. We have the full quad here today. I'm Jessica Lesson here with, or across the way from Sam Lesson, back from his adventure.
I'm Brian Singerman.
You are not Brian Singerman. No.
But he was great last week. He was our guest last week. If you didn't tune in, you should.
Make sure to tune in. Did you guys see? He then went on like another VC podcast. I'm like, Brian.
What?
Really?
What's going on?
Traitor.
We kicked off a tour. I have been on all the podcasts talking about how wonderful Founders Fund is.
We unleashed the beast.
If you need $100 gajillion, you call me, Brian Singerman.
Yeah.
But I'm only interested in putting in $100 gajillion.
Is Brian Founders Fund's like face of the fund now? Like he does the marketing?
Well, he's always run the fund.
He's always run the fund. So
can I get $1 trillion from you?
Oh, Dave.
No, trillion? What? No.
No, that's the wrong Sam, Dave. That's Sam Lesson. That's Sam
I think
Altman.
we should aim. Our objective for this pod should be that we can give it the title like A Trillion Reasons or something like that. So just keep that in your mind for your
How about
soundbite.
A Trillion Reasons to Leave Your Lover, like the song, but for Valentine's Day.
What song is that?
Oh my goodness. Guys, welcome to my
50
world.
ways to leave your lover. It's a trillion ways.
I still don't know what song we're talking about.
You going to sing it, Sam?
50 ways to leave your lover. You don't know this song? It's a great
To leave
song.
them? Why are we talking about this on
Is this like
Valentine's
an
Day?
old school song?
Just
I know this
get out
song?
the back, Jack. Get a new plan, Stan.
We're going to have to look this up and
let's
You know, it's ringing
It's
a
a
bell.
very famous song. This is a great song. I think it's Paul Simon.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Okay, and with that, let me introduce the other dynamic duo in the quad, Britt and Dave Morin. I'm glad everyone's here, guys. There's a lot to talk about this week. There's been an abundance of news, of AI news. We're further into the Pro analysis, the Vision Pro. We will have more to say on that. We've got obviously, well, there's much to discuss. Britt has a story to kick us off, but I also wanted to kick us off with an apology because last week,
Never apologize.
Yeah, what
I
did
know
we do
what we
wrong?
did. I know what we did
That's
wrong.
the one rule of like the modern community. There's no apology.
you know what, Sam? We're different people. We have different rules. I would like to apologize for neglecting the PCC last week.
Yeah.
So, as you guys who all listen to the episode will know, we covered so much ground. There was so much wisdom, so many insights. And alas, we came up against the clock, that hypothetical podcast clock that doesn't exist. And we got off, and Britt goes, "We didn't do a pop culture corner." And of course, Dave and I are like, "Well, just put it back on. Like we can pop culture corner now, and it together, no one will know." But Britt felt that the sanctity of the PCC had not been respected appropriately by not giving her that space. And Britt, we could have talked about a lot last week, but I feel like we can talk about more on the PCC this week. So maybe
It was a big pop culture week. Even I know
Big
that.
PCC week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are we doing this now?
I'm going to make it up to you by letting you lead.
Well, wait, what if I
Okay.
have pop culture? I heard that Taylor Swift's cat has $96 million. Did you see this on the internet?
Sam, that's easily a month old. No, I think it's the net worth of her cat.
Which is
something in
which
that
is
ballpark.
twice what her boyfriend has earned in his career. And the question is, how can you respect a man who owns half of what your cat does?
He's earned more than
To be
50
fair,
million.
her cat's pretty famous, Sam.
That's what my feeds are telling me. I don't know about you guys.
Wow, Sam's feeds are really it. But let's let Britt. It was a big pop culture week. We had the Super Bowl, we had the Taylor Super Bowl, we had the whole thing. So let's start there. And again, I will not neglect the PCC again. So I apologize.
It's fine. Well, and thank you for letting me lead with this. We usually do it at the end as kind of the cherry on top of every episode, but I know that our audience is dying to hear a little bit about pop culture. And it's not actually just about Taylor Swift every week. However, because the Chiefs won, that's kind of what, this week has been about. I will say I had predicted that Usher would be a pretty big deal in the Super Bowl. And I do believe Usher was a big deal. And I appreciated all of his special guests that he brought out. It was such a great throwback to the 90s. Beyonce dropped a new album in the same Super Bowl. And then Taylor and Travis went out clubbing afterwards. And things got weird that night. Her parents showed up. She wasn't totally sure if her parents. Her parents and Travis and her all went to the club.
Apparently told her to bring her parents to a small friends and family only party. And then there were like 5,000 people there.
What club was it? Was it Lavo?
It was some huge club.
Win. Yeah. No, I think it was
there
the
was
Win.
Something at the Win, and the clips are basically like her mouthing or like singing to or like lip syncing to, I guess, Love Story with Travis, like her own music. It was like very meta.
I like the thing I saw on the internet of him singing the Las Vegas.
Oh, that was horrible.
And then all the captions were like Taylor Swift realizing that the IQ of her children is going to be 27. That was funny.
I do think the internet was funny after the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it was good. Although, can we just pour one out for our homies, the 49ers? I think they played a fantastic game.
That was like a really awesome football game. And I watched part of it in the
You only watched
Vision
part of it?
Pro.
Oh, no, he watched part of it in Vision Pro.
I was on child returning duty. And so I had to, but I Vision Pro'd the second part. You got you're twisting the cable, Jess.
In real time, just so everyone that can't see the video knows this, Jess just put on the Vision Pro in real time.
Honestly, it was a fabulous. I literally was sitting in front of our large flat screen in our living room with the Vision Pro on, not using the flat screen because the Vision Pro is better. So longer story. It doesn't have many apps, but I will say the big television app is a thing.
Nice. It was an amazing football game. I think Brock Purdy was, too apologetic about his performance. I think he proved that he is a quarterback worthy of the Super Bowl. And I hope they keep the team together and go for it again, because the team, I think, played great. And like we talked about on the pod beforehand, I mean, Patrick Mahomes, you give him the ball on a final drive like that, he's going to score a touchdown. So I think that
I also just love that we get to do the traditional tech thing, which is now we have opinions about everything.
Dave has always had opinions about football. If I said you give Patrick Mahomes the ball on a drive and he scores, then you guys could roll your eyes.
I think we give that cat, the $96 million cat, the ball.
I beg to differ. I think I have the best football knowledge of all of us.
Maybe.
I'm just going to say, I'm going to put that out there. I'm from Texas. I grew up invested in football. So
I will say this has piqued my interest in the sports documentary entertainment genre. I love this genre. So this is like the Drive to Survive.
Well, it's 30 under. It's for 30 for 30. Is really
30 under 30 is like the original.
Not under.
Yeah, 30 under 30. That's a Forbes list.
Sorry. 30 for 30.
30 for 30 good, 30 under 30 ridiculous. Although probably about the same percentage of key people in it end up in jail.
Yes. That is one of your smart points. So the Drive to Survive with Formula One, they made a version of this for surfing, which you could skip. But then there's Breakpoint for tennis. I've started the Quarterback limited series on Amazon with Mahomes and other quarterbacks. And I've also started the Kelsey docuseries. And I really like the genre. And I think I'm ready to pitch my idea. Sam has heard this, but to all our listeners, I would be interested in this happening. But I would like to see the same level of intense. Oh, the Tour de France one is really good too. I want a series that follows the high intensity sport of football coaching. Like, I want to see everything from the perspective of the coaches.
Well, you need to watch Coach Prime on Amazon Prime.
Really good.
Because it's about the return of, it actually follows Deion Sanders through his time at
Deion Sanders is going to come back?
At Jackson State. Well, it takes you through the Jackson State part of the story and then onto the Boulder part of the story. And it is from the coach's perspective. So I think that's kind of interesting.
I want to know about the coach's nutrition, because they seem like they have a variety of approaches to nutrition in terms of their peak athletic performance.
Do you think they're on ketones?
One of them very fat. The Kansas City very fat one beat the San Francisco not so fat one. I wonder if there's something in the meat.
Well, so all of this that we're talking about, and we've talked about sports media quite a bit on the pod, but I think that the fact that this was the largest viewing audience since the moon landing kind of proves the point that sports media is proving to be the final frontier in the internet age of linear storytelling, of live events. It's like this amazing, incredible format that is, I don't know that anybody would have predicted this, that in 2024, at the peak of social media, you would have this like traditional sports storytelling format having the success that it's having. And that the NBA and the NFL would kind of be the final frontiers of like the national monocultures that everyone has in common. And
I think people have been predicting this for a while, because basically everything becomes so virtual and everything's made up and people are desperate for like people hitting each other. Right.
Yeah.
And like
there's something primal about it.
Yeah.
And also the stories and the fact that you have to keep tuning in to know what's going to happen. Like there's a lot.
Yeah, I think the point you're pointing out is like really valid, that like these people become these, characters and these stories that you can follow, and you can follow them into a bunch of different formats, and there's a lot of fun in it, and it's a deeply human experience, and that it's just like, I think it's really interesting, and I'm becoming ever more interested in it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the question is like national versus international. Right, like the NFL's push to become internationally relevant is obviously key. It's like you have 110 million over Americans effectively watching it, but like that's a drop in the bucket globally. The question of, can you have global sports? I mean, this goes back to the whole UFC/fighting. Fighting is the ultimate global sport, right? The problem is there are too many plot lines, there are too many characters. It's not like cohered the way you can have the seasons aren't. It's not as good a format. But this whole question of like, okay, are sports regional? You look at even like, can cricket go international? Everyone's trying to figure out how to break sports out of these kind of regional things and make them bigger to make them more profitable and better. And also because, again, like from a coherence perspective, it's like, Dave, I would challenge. I mean, like I think a lot of people have been talking about a long time about sports is all that will be left, because everything else becomes virtual, and it becomes really hard to like talk about reality and splintered culture. And like sports is like the only thing which is so physical and real, and like there are winners and losers, and it's about ability, not DEI, right? That like kind of cohere society.
Yeah, I think that so point well taken. And to me, it's this monoculture thing, that there just aren't that many monocultures left. Everybody's walking around in their own personal counterculture defined by the media that they follow on social media. And there just aren't that many things you can talk to everybody about anymore
100%.
that aren't politics.
Yep.
And the NFL, the NBA, maybe Taylor Swift is starting to be in there. And you could argue that that's kind of what happened on Sundays. You had the collision of these monocultures that rose this to a level not seen since the moon landing. And that's, I don't know, it's pretty interesting. But Sam, I agree with you on the international question. I was thinking about that a lot this week. I was hanging out with some NBA folks earlier this week. And it's interesting that there hasn't been a culmination of, like sort of the tournament of the world, right? Like there's big, basketball leagues in Japan and Australia and Europe. There hasn't been like other than the Olympics really, but there hasn't been a coming together of all these different leagues into who's the best in the world, not just who's the best in America. And I actually think there's demand for it.
Why hasn't it happened, Dave?
Well, the NBA is the best in the world. The best people just end up in the NBA.
Yeah, it's true. But there are a lot of great players all over the world. And it's a quite global sport. Yeah. And, these other things like cricket or whatever, they're big in one region, trying to bring it to another. Even soccer, right? Like soccer hasn't really broken out in the United States. Probably won't anytime soon.
We should potentially move on to the news of the week. But I will say this summer, I very much look forward to our episode We Must Do on like the failure of the Olympics. I love the Olympics. I love the Olympics, but it's
Me
like
too.
clearly flailing, right, as like a sports platform, which you think was supposed to be the whole global thing, but like it's going in super weird directions, and I think not successful in its strategy, right? Versus like the NBA and NFL. I think there, to your point, there's the storytelling is too stochastic and sporadic, right? It's too diffuse, right? There's not enough narrative to it, and like I think that's actually what we're seeing is like as these things globalize, the contest of what does global sport look like is really interesting, and I am sad that I don't think the Olympics is currently winning.
Yeah, and I think you lost it. Like NBC and the big platforms had this like static audience that they could tell the story of the athletes to in the lead up to the Olympics, so they could like build the story of an athlete for the many months leading up to it, and that's just gone now with streaming. And so you just end up, to your point, it's just stochastic. Like you just don't have the ability to build these stories up of these unless they're like,
well, and the staying power is like you build it all up for a 30-second sprint. And you're like, all right, you either won or lost, and like let's see you again in 4 years.
It's just not enough, right? And I was on the board of the U.S. ski team for close to a decade, and it's an enormously hard problem. Like unless the athletes are doing it themselves, which is very hard, as we all know, like you just don't have the story that you get. I mean, the Warriors are playing 3 times this week, right? So it's like they're going to do, over 80 games per season. You just have so many more storytelling moments than the Olympics will ever have. And it's really hard.
Okay, well, I like this topic.
But I am excited for the Paris barge parade. That'll be fun.
The opening ceremony on the Seine. Is that what you're talking about?
Should be interesting.
That's like the Wally Olympics where like the athletes can no longer walk.
Oh, no.
By the way, I guess it's a major problem. We've got one of our business partners is on the U.S. Olympic Committee, and I guess it's like a major problem that the athletes are going to have to stand in one place for a very long period of time.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Their muscles shouldn't do
there's
that.
Gotta be, look, someone's boat's going to stink, and it's going to be hilarious.
They're going to need like the standing treadmill desks or something. Yeah. That's fascinating. Yeah. Okay. I want
to talk about technology.
Well, there's a lot of AI news that we're going to have to make sense of this week. But before we do, we're 7 days further into the Vision Pro. The lessons have played with it. We've done some comparisons with the Oculus, although we apparently don't have exactly the right version of Oculus. So we
have the Pro. The other one's supposed to be delivered yesterday. Yes. The 3. We bought it.
I do need to get a 3. Actually, I'm going to order one.
You should order a 3.
I don't have one.
Really have
Every time a box arrives, I'm like, is it another VR device?
No, it's a Pro one.
But Sam, I want to turn the mic over to you. What are your initial impressions? And I'll share some. And then the more ends, I want your week later impressions.
So there's no content, right? It's a beautiful device. Like there's no question that like the movie watching experience is sweet. And candidly, like I'm happy to work in it, right? Like, you have to plug a keyboard in, you have to plug, a trackpad in, and, setting up 6 screens. It's like, it's not better than my dual ridiculously set up at home monitors, but it's certainly better than my laptop, right? So like on the road, the idea of like taking a keyboard and the Pro and banging out email and doing my notes and whatever. I mean, I think it's extremely hilarious to use Twitter inside of it because you're like using, which I do, I've done it. And it's like, wow, I'm using something that was designed for T9 on like $3,000 of AI hardware. And it's like just kind of funny, right? But it's good. It's good. It's good as a work machine. I will say that it did make me take out my Oculus again for a while. And it also kind of made me just appreciate Oculus. Like from a content perspective and games perspective, we let our son play Beat Saber for the first time. I was playing, I was like, this is really fun, right? And it like feels less precious. Like I wasn't as worried about like banging it and things like that. So I don't know. It's like, it does feel like, I wouldn't say it's going to happen, but there's the science fiction story, which is this stuff is coming, has been around forever. And for a long time, we said, the story's there, but how long, far out? Now I'm like, people will have face computers and they'll be pretty good. And look, I think that the challenge is going to be, you have the Apple, it's all about content and experience. And the Apple stuff, the good news is my apps work on it, and like the login works, and like the buying shit with your eyes is awesome. And like, it actually is like a very usable experience for browsing the internet and like watching TV. And it's cool to set it up and like kick back and like watch a big screen. But that's it, right? And then I think on the Oculus side, it's a delightful device. Like there's a bunch of fun games on it. I don't play that many games, but like when I am.
Are we seeing, is this the Android versus iOS war playing out on our face computers?
Absolutely.
Not yet, though, because Google hasn't launched theirs.
Well, in this, so far, Oculus would be the Android, but
no. Mark made this point in his video that he put out, which I think is worth watching if you haven't. I think is honest and true. Which is like it's clear that like Oculus is the Android answer, right? And like you have the closed ecosystem and the open one, and that'll play out. I mean, unfortunately, the problem is that Android is kind of dying / not working, and iOS is just completely dominating. And like we'll have to see whether this new form factor, how that plays out. I mean, for now, it's just so obvious to me that like it's just the Apple device is an Apple device. It works really well. The keyboard integrates well. It's easy to wear, and like I have a web browser on my face.
I just think it gets a lot more difficult though when Google's whole XR sort of OS launches and people are building the real Android of VR devices.
The question though is like, I mean, yes, Britt, and I'm often in the camp of don't count Google out, which I think is proving smart as it relates to Gemini, but
I'm surprised we're talking about Google. I didn't even think they had a horse in this race.
Didn't they have? Yeah. They had the cardboard box you stuck on your face.
Remember when your New York Times came with Google Cardboard? Do you guys remember
Yeah,
this?
but that was a decade ago.
No, Dave.
I mean, Britt's right. They're working on something, but Dave's also right. Like, it's not...
There's no product in the market.
Yes, there is. Google, in June of 2023, shifted the focus to XR software. So it's basically like creating Android for VR. And any hardware developers can incorporate XR into their own hardware as their own VR device.
But the problem is there isn't an install base of this hardware yet, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, but like you can imagine Sony has one and Logitech has one. It's the same thing as what they did with Android. And then I think it like it competes with the Oculus market, right? Because Google has all kinds of other Android applications, just like Apple,
this
that
sounds
will
like
feed
Chromebooks.
right into
sell a lot of them for educational purposes. To like,
I don't count them out.
I really didn't think this debate was going to go this way.
I would like to put this prediction on the ballot for 2024, Jess, that we revert back to in December. Let's wait till December.
Here's what I think is going to happen. I think Britt is totally right in what they're going to try to do, but I think the execution on the hardware is like. I don't think that the like Android ecosystem of hardware players are going to build competitive devices for a long time.
You think you're going to be wearing an Asus face computer?
No, but I could imagine a Samsung or Sony. Like it's like I do. I think so, guys. Don't count me out.
You're going to wear
put it
that.
on the put it on the dock.
What time frame, Britt? What time frame?
I'm like 5 years. I'm talking about 5 years from now.
No.
Yes.
Okay. I think these two have such a head start.
I think Google, Meta, Apple.
The scale of investment isn't even in the remote same ballpark.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think the price of all of the technology will drop in the next 5 to 10 years. And there will be
I don't think so, because I think we're so many generations away from having the
What's
level.
happened to the Android phone hardware ecosystem, right? I mean...
It's fucked.
I'm so confused by this debate.
It's okay. You guys can disagree. This is healthy.
I can't wait for you to be stuck on principle wearing an Asus headset and having spyware all over your face.
No, but I think this is the...
As of August 2023, Android has 70% global market share, while iOS has 28.5%.
No, but those figures don't mean anything. And also, like, look, the Android strategy is obviously a strategy. No, I'm not arguing Android isn't successful, but I think this is going to be a tough category for them to play that playbook in. And what happened in phones, too. I mean, I remember sitting at the Googleplex. This is Jessica's story corner of me going up to random people. And it was it was HTC and Google were announcing the first Android phone. Sergey Brin was sitting there by himself in the cafeteria. And I went up to him and I said, "Are you guys going to launch your own phone?" And he said, "Not if we don't have to, or only if we have to." Right? Like basically, that's not our first path. But if we are the only ones who can build it, we'll build it. Which, of course, many years later,
and the Google phones and the Google computers actually were good, right? But like all the other ones, the ecosystem ones, and then they stopped making them.
Well, and then, yeah, they've been through many twists and turns of the strategy. So I think this is why it's so interesting. I mean, ain't tech interesting, guys? Like that is totally the playbook Google's going to use. I think there are big differences from the smartphone world.
The biggest one is no one's going to try to make money on the devices, right? Like, right. I think that's the biggest difference is like, these are like extremely like content driven business models, both by Oculus and by Apple, right? In terms of where they're going for this. Like, even Apple, I think, will like have to get the price way below where it was. But these are expensive things to make at a high end, and like no one's going to try to make margin on them. So there's no way for Sony to come out and like make a good device and charge good margins on it. It's going to be 100% software ecosystems, and like those will end up being like, I think, the Oculus world and the Apple world.
There had to be a reason why Google chose this strategy. Like they have to believe that people will use it. I don't know.
If the strategy was invest $1 gazillion trillion, right? I mean, I don't know. Like,
I just love how everybody in the ecosystem is debating Quest versus Vision Pro, and Britt comes in with, but what about Google?
Guys,
no,
wait.
It's an important question.
I'm going to be very happy in a few years when I'm right.
This is going to age. I think this is going to age very poorly for someone.
The thing that I think is interesting is I actually think the Vision Pro and the Quest strategies are very different. But like if you're reading the tech news this week, it would be everybody's describing them as identical. And I think that the strategies are completely different.
What do you think the strategies are, Dave?
I said it last week, but I think that the Vision Pro is a much more spatial computer than it is a VR AR device. Like the Quest is as described this week, it's 11 years old. It's got a ton of content. The Vision Pro is 11 days old, and it's very focused on, like, the thing that I think is so fascinating about it is that you can walk around in the world with it, and it's mapping the world out around you. Like, I continue to be astounded by this.
Have you used the latest Oculus? Because it's also...
It can't do this. It doesn't have the same LiDAR capabilities, and nobody's talking about this.
Yeah, I do agree with you, Dave, that the fact that like the Vision Pro is basically just a souped up camera is super interesting. And I will say that playing back panoramas in it, old ones, is super compelling.
It's insane.
I will also say that the recording, I did this thing, I walked through like our house and then recorded it and then played it back. And I personally found it weird and disorienting because I was like, whoa, I'm in my house, but I'm facing the other way walking through it. And it's like a crazy experience.
It's wild. And the thing that I keep thinking about is that right now you can take windows in the Vision Pro and you can put them on walls in other rooms, and you can walk into the other room and they're still in the same position.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And it's only a single player experience right now. And the thing that I keep thinking about is that once this goes internet or goes social, where anyone can put anything on the walls around you, like that gets crazy really fast. And I know that like people have talked about this, but Apple is executing on this. And their vision on it, to me, is really clear. And it's just a different vision path. It's like a different execution pathway than the Quest. And that's to say nothing about, I think the Quest is great. Like, it's got a lot of amazing things about it. It's extraordinary in a lot of ways. But I just think they're quite different. And I think that's like a thing to be aware of.
I think it's a great way to frame it and think about it. I agree that the camera is super interesting and like the direction. But here's the interesting question: is the vision you just described of like the world full of posters and art and weird shit and overlays that are fundamentally social in Apple world. Apple's not historically very good at social software, right? They're good at a lot of other things, right? And so the question is going to be: you have Facebook, which is like, or Meta, sorry, the ultimate social software company, right? Which is down a VR path. They have a lot of interesting things about how to meet up, but it's all very like virtual oriented first. And then I agree that you have this like spatial computing model, but the interesting part of it is probably Apple's weakest zone, right? Which is social software.
I would argue that they're both pretty weak on this. Jess, you were saying like do an op-ed, and I was thinking about
soliciting. Always be soliciting.
I was thinking about like what's the thing that is bothering me the most like about this. And the thing that's bothering me the most about the Vision Pro right now is that it's extremely hard to communicate with other people using it. Like, Sam, to your point about Twitter, like using text messaging inside the Vision Pro, it's sort of like that old adage that we used to say at Facebook that like the first ads when the TV appeared were people reading a radio ad sitting in front of a camera. Like, that's what text messaging on the Vision Pro feels like to me. It's like, this isn't how I'm supposed to communicate with other people.
Well, those are without a keyboard ridiculously annoying and hard. So I actually I like end up sending people like voice messages because it's just not. I'm not going to pull out a keyboard inside the Vision
Yeah, but
Pro.
even that feels strange to me. Like, I don't think people always want to use voice, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, what's the non-voice way we all communicate through these
Thinking.
through these
Okay, I have to
things?
pause for a second. Sam, why do you have a throwing star in your hand?
Just to play with.
Is that what happens when you get mad at somebody in a meeting?
Did you? I saw these arrive. You
actually
purchased
gave it? No, I didn't purchase this. You know what this is from? This is a blast from the past. You know who gave this to me? Mark Slee. Like a billion years ago, gave me a throwing star, and I can't remember why, but it's actually.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at our pocket axes that have arrived.
Oh no, those I bought.
What are those for?
Cutting stuff. Josh Wolf suggested them to me.
Okay.
Totally.
We're going to end by making all of that make sense. But Dave, I think I am like so interested in your vision on how this category becomes social. And also what you described sounds like all those mobile check-in treasure hunt games that were hot for a second.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't think it's fair. I don't think describing it as social is actually the right way to describe it. Like, that's why I started out saying when it goes internet, right? Like, it's about, like, where does the browser go in this world? The browser isn't a browser anymore. It's like the walls are you're able to like change the walls of the physical space and the floor, and you're able to like do things like what we would call a web page in the internet today, but it's like the surface of the world becomes spatial computing.
And then we just like give up on like making things look nice in the real world in paint, and the world looks like shit, and we all wander around in VR headsets. It's awesome.
Maybe both happen, Sam. Maybe it's like the world actually becomes more beautiful because you're able to like prototype what you want things to look like better, right? Like, I think that's the counter argument.
Glass half full.
That was very much a more or less opinion right there. I liked that, guys.
Your carpet gets a stain on it when your kids spill chocolate milk on it. You just like paper it over in VR and call it a day.
I just want to wrap up this section by saying I was blown away by the Vision Pro. I was. And I was reminded, Britt, when you were talking about the T-Rex slobbering on you.
Did you watch that dinosaur?
I didn't watch it yet, but I knew about that because we reported in the information that was the moment when they demoed it to Bob Iger.
And he got it.
That was kind of their demo to him many, many months ago, and the thing that kind of changed his experience of it. So
look, the resolution boost matters. I mean, I watched you put it on, and you're like, Alicia Keys is right in front of me.
I like wanted to touch her. I thought she was right there.
Let's be honest, Oculus did that exact same thing like 8 years ago, right? The difference is, honestly, the resolution boost does matter in terms of it feeling great.
It felt amazing. And then it was also really fun to play an Oculus. And I think Apple, like the experience, having never worn a face computer before, it wasn't, there was plenty that felt clumsy and like I was learning, but there was also plenty that didn't feel clumsy and like I was learning. And I think that it's really impressive. And it is one of these moments where, to your point, like the things that you can start to think about with technology are quite interesting. And I think the category will be a category. How mainstream, at what pace, who the heck knows? But it was very cool. And I thought more I'd put it on and like, it would feel like a kind of evolution of something, but it felt very, all the things the more
it was
said.
More a revolution is what you're saying. So are we all 444 more?
I think we're
Vision
more.
Pro? We're all more on the Vision
I'm just
Pro?
annoyed because just like all these other headsets, I realize that like I'm going to have so many in my house that I'm not using. Like I'm just going to keep buying them.
Okay, your children will steal them from you like they do ours.
The problem is the next one comes out. It's kind of like, it's like your phone, but your phone is small, and so you like stick it in a drawer and you forget that you have it, and you have a stack of 100 phones.
This is a problem.
The headsets are large, and so you're just going to have so many of them in your house collecting dust that you're not using because they're not the latest and greatest.
You should recycle your technology, Sam.
I actually think that's why people are excited, because it's like, whoa, this is V1 of this thing. And so it only gets better.
I have
from here.
literally 4 Oculuses in my house, about to have 5, and like I can't throw them out, but they're just big.
We need to create a computer history museum.
Yeah, there are places that will take them.
Oh man.
someone who used to own our house was a baseball player, and he built like a trophy room for himself. We could just use that for
the tech showcase. Yeah.
The tech showcase. Okay. Any other thoughts? Well, on the devices, let's
talk.
You
just tell people on the internet that we have a trophy room in our house.
Well, you didn't build it. You didn't build it.
We didn't build it. What are you talking about?
Oh, of course. That makes it fine.
It's actually this room that I'm in. It's my office. And
I don't know, Sam. Plenty of people collect things and build shelves for them.
Also, let's talk about the pool house for a second, shall we?
It's very human to have a collection.
Right now, it has notebooks and books in it. So I'm saying if we want the space for our, our devices.
Historic technology.
But let's talk about the content piece of it. So how are we feeling? Obviously, it's early in terms of apps. How do we think that's going to evolve? And anyone hearing developer level of interest? What's the path there?
Some intense developer level interest. I mean, I said this last episode, but I really think this was a dev kit release, and that the point of this release was to get developers excited. It's like everything that we're all talking about. It's really amazing for all these reasons. It's obviously the first version, but it sort of gives you a canvas. And I think that there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff. I mean, there's already...
Are you actually talking to because the other thing is I feel like that just from an ecosystem perspective, it's there are always factions. There's a bunch of tech energy has been pulled into obviously AI type stuff.
Yep.
There's the crypto kitty hangout, right?
Yep.
And the thing that's interesting to me, I totally believe the Vision Pro will get Hollywood and content producer over the hump of actually producing content, literally movies. So you're wow, this is actually pretty interesting to play with, from a pure sit back, lean back experience.
Yep.
Is there what is the MO of software developers that are excited about this versus AI?
I think it's, well, Sam, like you always say, it's a question of distribution, right?
Yeah, that's my thing.
It's a question of timing. I just think it's a question of timing, more than anything. So with a venture capital hat on, it's do you invest now to be ready for 3 years from now? Probably not. Do you do some early research and playing around? Do the companies that have experiences that would be adjacent to this spend some small amount of their research dollars on figuring out what's possible here? Yeah, maybe. Are there enterprise use cases that you could build into today? Maybe.
I just think it's a lot of seeding. It's not clear to me who the developers are, other than someone will clearly has to release the I'm Rich app again, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what this is all over, and the fart apps. But in terms of actual developer activity, it's going to be. I think it's going to be a while.
They're
going to have to invest a bunch to get people to do it.
For sure.
What's the one app that each of you would love to see for the device?
Facebook. Instagram.
Oh, I was thinking more professional services and more B2B enterprise plays. I can imagine realtors figuring this out, doctors.
That's what you want?
I mean,
to invest in. But I also meant Britt for you. Britt,
yeah.
She could have a budding real estate career.
Enjoy your realtor app on your Asus face computer.
I've been downloading all the apps. There's a really amazing Zillow app.
Dave and I are home decor enthusiasts. Dave was on the board of Dwell for a long time. That's a big segment of Brit & Co. I would totally go on home tours and
it's already
Dwell
there.
houses.
You can do it tonight.
You know what I would do? They have that, what's the Zillow Gone Wild? I would definitely be in for a Zillow Gone Wild home tour thing. Because the Zillow Gone Wild is the craziest fucking houses on Zillow.
I love that.
People that to me is an interesting content meets something where that actually does make sense to me, right? That I would be okay, this is hilarious, but those houses will be even more hilarious immersively.
There's also a really amazing music video app. The Alicia Keys thing is really awesome.
It's stunning.
But there's a music video app actually that T-Pain is in and got a bunch of new stuff coming. And so they're all doing 3D stuff.
I have an idea. Okay. What if there's an app where you could rewind time and be in the old school music videos that we used to watch growing up, like Baby One More Time, but you learn the dance move. It's like Darren's Dance Grooves, which we all watched as girls on DVD, and then you learn the moves, and then you're in the video with Brittany, and you feel like you're one of her dancers. And
yeah, I'd buy that. I'd buy it.
Right?
You might buy it. You will not use that. That
I would
is
use it.
no chance.
I think dance will be
it's
a big category.
Dance Revolution,
yeah,
but in a music video with Britney Spears. Why
Yeah.
wouldn't you use it?
I don't think like Beat Saber is awesome and super fun, right? Like I'd be like thrilled for like but Beat Saber is great. I think the problem with a lot of these things though is like they again, this goes back to the social thing, is like those types of games are fun when you can share them. Like you're not actually going to sit in a dark room by yourself and relive 90.
Oh no, you'll have your friends dancing with you. You're all Britney's backup dancers.
You can mirror what you see in the Vision Pro to a screen that other people can see, right?
Yeah, but like it's just clunky. It doesn't, I don't know. I don't think that, I think this is one of the big problems versus console games is like, it really does suck to do. It's really fun to play VR remotely with friends. I mean, especially in the pandemic, I played a ton of Arizona Sunshine with friends, right? And that was
I remember
really
those
fun.
days.
I love that. I was like, killing 1,000 zombies before you went to bed was like extremely relaxing. Right? Just like the utter gore of it. Right? It was great.
That was peak pandemic, Sam.
It was really wonderful.
Yeah.
When you gather humans in a space, no one wants to put on a face computer, right?
True.
And I think that's going to be a weird thing in terms of how it gets distributed and what experiences work. Is like I think Dance Dance Revolution was a social experience around a screen in a way that I don't think we're going to see.
I'm going to also debate you on this because I think our generation doesn't prefer to do this, but I think Gen Z are known as the generation that sit together doing their homework with their FaceTime like group call on, and they all have screens even though they're doing other things. They have screens in their face at all times while they're being social. And so
but they're doing that like putting on a headset, right?
I don't know. I would just say if there's it's probably going to vary by age.
Accessories. I think there's going to be accessories. I think there's going to be like cameras you could attach to your TV. I think there's going to be like lots of ways you can interact with this world that start to appear. And my answer to your question is I'm excited for this thing that we were talking about earlier, which is like the spatial internet. Like I want to see that happen. And to me, like that's the like really powerful. It's like an app, I guess. It's like a browser app of some kind. Well, I think it's more like, what does the browser become in the spatial internet? It becomes everywhere. And like I think that's, to me, like that's like really exciting to think about.
I think it's to me, the thing I worry about is we're still like in the Encarta era of this stuff where like I get it, but like other than like ending up with like weird political posters all over buildings and like papering over children's spills on carpets, like I'm curious what that will actually, like what is useful for.
Yeah, but the early internet was fun. Like it was super interesting.
It was weird.
Yeah.
It was weird.
It'll be weird just the same, right? And I also want social experiences. I actually want social experiences that don't require voice and I want to like interact with people through this thing. And I feel like that just doesn't exist. But like I'm interested in anyone working on social experiences for this thing. Like I think that it's like fertile ground and no one's doing anything yet.
I'm too. You can come hang out in the pool house. I probably won't invest in it, but I'm happy to bullshit about it.
I would like a piano instructor. So I would like to wear this thing and then get a new, like to play and to have like some guide to help me learn more pieces on the piano. That's cool. I think.
Seems like there's some of that going on. I've seen a few demo videos.
Well, there's like the whole YouTube. I mean, I know how to play the piano, so I don't like, but there's a whole genre of like color coding stuff that I'm not that into, but doesn't scale.
I guess that's what I saw. I saw it almost looked like Guitar Hero overlay.
Yes.
Yeah. I will say in professional applications, we're obviously several steps away from it, but like having just been flying airplanes this morning, I will say that like the iPad is actually completely revolutionary for flying planes, right? Like just ridiculously, it's incredible. Like ForeFlight is an amazing app, right? And if you told me that in a few years with FAA, OK, and whatever else that needs to come, that you're going to be flying small planes with the Vision Pro up, that I actually believe, right? And I think that will be really interesting.
That seems plausible, Sam. I mean, like fighter jets, people are already doing this, right?
It is cheap. It's like, but if you told me that, like, candidly, it'll be one of those things where, like, yes, currently the Navy gives people like $1 million heads-up display custom helmets that probably do some version of this, but you told me that actually Vision-esque Pro type things ends up being like way cheaper and way better than what the military has for $1 million a pop right now. That I actually believe. And it doesn't seem that crazy to think about how that would happen.
I agree with that.
I also think it'll make like flying small airplanes safer, right? For sure, right? Which will be cool. So
guys, I have to. I do want to hit in our final segment a little bit of AI news. So we're back to seeing.
That's yesterday's news. No one cares about AI now. We're talking about spatial computing.
I keep getting distracted because there's so much going on, but I have a thesis that what venture capitalists have been interested in lately is AI and then sparkling soda water. But I feel like there's a whole explosion.
What? Sparkling soda water?
No, that was
totally.
That was like a years ago thing.
Not just liquid death. I'm talking about
No, there was a Super Bowl commercial. I actually thought it was compelling.
You know why?
Can you guys explain what you're talking about? Because I have no idea.
You know why the Super Bowl commercial skewed female? Okay.
Stay tuned. Okay, but we're stay focused on AI. So
well, wait, what's an example of sparkling soda water?
Dave, we're not talking
about
Poppy.
That's what the Super Bowl tried to sell me.
See, Dave, you haven't even heard about it yet.
No, it wasn't selling to you, Sam.
This is where I plug Magic Mind, because Magic Mind is way better and faster growing.
Okay. The Super Bowl knew.
Then we got to go to AI.
The Super Bowl knew that more women would turn out to watch this year. And as a result, more ads were skewed female leaning than ever before, one of which was Poppy, which is a sparkling beverage that is directly targeted at women as the primary consumer.
I wanted one.
But I'm glad that it broke through to Sam. So there you go.
Isn't it just a probiotic beverage of some kind?
Yes.
It's the future of soda, Dave. It's the soda. Soda's not unhealthy.
Oh.
Soda tastes delicious and is wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. OpenAI, you will recall this company. You will recall that it was in a governance crisis. You may or may not be interested that it doesn't seem to have resolved said governance crisis, but we will table that for another day. 2 interesting scoops in the information this week about it. One, launching an agent. You'll remember from the Scott Belsky episode, Scott thinks that these agents, which basically stitch together doing a bunch of things with AI, are the future. And then also, guys,
what does this agent do? I didn't even see this news. I don't understand.
If you don't consume the information every second, how do you?
You didn't see Brett Taylor launched his company, Sierra?
Brett Taylor launched his company.
Mindy,
which, by the way,
another one called Mindy was announced today. It's an email agent.
Is Brett Taylor still the enterprise safe AI, or did they pivot?
Enterprise AI agent.
Same thing. But I don't know. I'm kind of short agents, guys. I feel like
I'm long agents, but I think I think there are too many people trying to build agents, and there's going to be a consolidation of agents to some extent. Or
I don't know, guys. I don't have a single agent in my life doing anything for me, so I don't even know what this is.
You know, this is the vision of the 1980s, the alternate internet, where
Dave,
people go
let
out
me give
and
you
talk
some
to each other.
examples. Okay.
Other than that, Perplexity is really good, and it kind of does some agenty kind of stuff.
So that's the second thing. But okay, so let me tell you about these agents. So the agents, for instance, would do things like take data from a document to a spreadsheet or fill out your expense report and enter it to your accounting software. And the agent would actually perform the clicks, the cursor movements, the typing, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and what happens when the agent hallucinates half the time while you're not paying attention?
It's like then you're going to get an enormous expense reimbursement.
Yeah, this is kind of the point. All right. Okay, other than agents.
Look, this is like, it's basically Zapier. It's like Zapier meets like 1980s pre-internet version of Agent World meets like, I don't know. What's the framework that people use for clicking on the front ends of things?
Like, I'm going to say words, but then I'll sound dumb, so I'm not going to say.
I can't remember what it is. There's a front end testing suite everyone uses these days that like basically does all the clicks for you for unit testing.
Yes, that sounds like an agent. Think of it as taking over your computer.
They're all agents.
It's just such an unfortunate word and description. But anyways,
well, the other option is Copilot.
Well, guys, I really like the Copilot Super Bowl ad, right? So did you see that, Microsoft?
I can only remember one Super Bowl ad, and it's the Dung Kings.
Did you watch the extended version too?
No, let's stay on AI. Stay on AI.
I want to be the Dung Kings for Halloween.
Guys, we have to focus. We've got Valentine's brain, I'm sure. The 2 new products coming out of OpenAI, one being the agent, the other being a search engine.
I thought the other was a press release saying they're raising $7 trillion.
Yeah, that would be the third. So, and that has nothing to do with OpenAI.
Hilarious.
Very little to OpenAI. But I just want to talk about the search point quickly, which is
what's the difference? I don't understand. People are already using the Chat GPT interface for search. So what would the difference be?
I think it's probably to enhance Bing's capabilities is my guess. I think basically it's fascinating to see all of these companies, as happens, step on each other's turf. And even when they're partners in good old tech frenemy parlance. And so Microsoft Copilot, which began as really a coding Copilot, they're now marketing as a full-on
GitHub's Copilot.
Yeah, thank you. GitHub's Copilot is now they market it in the Super Bowl as a full-on ChatGPT competitor. And I thought the ad was pretty good. And so
I just can't believe they didn't take the opportunity to bring back Clippy. It's like that is the Super Bowl ad I wanted. Is like Clippy being like, "Fuck you, I'm back."
Yeah. So anyway, but it's and then gosh, so much happened in the last week. And then Google rebranded its AI efforts 77 trillion times, and it's now Gemini again. So
that's good.
Is Gemini, which is good. I'm so excited for it. So we have a lot to test. Maybe it's also time we all get back into these things and do some product comparisons now that there are so many on the market. And then lastly, we've known for some time that Sam Altman has had many side projects, one of which is a potential hardware thing with Johnny Ive, one of which has been to raise what we knew were gobs of money from the Middle East to ensure a supply of semiconductors for OpenAI's computing needs well into the future. And then the Journal reported this week, they put a dollar figure on what he's seeking to raise this money, which would be, potentially distributed through existing chip companies, but also, it is one big open question, but $7 trillion seems to be the price tag of ensuring your AI competence into the future. What did you guys make of that when you saw it?
I wrote a thing that actually got reasonably well. I call this a new era of absurdist capitalism.
Number go up.
Number go up.
Number go up. And once number up, then you have to name the next level of number ridiculous in order for anyone to write an article about it. This is so not credible that I think it kind of, for me, it goes into the step of this is just absurdism. And if any rational person would look at that and be like, wow, what else are we missing here if you weren't already asking that question? Because it's just ridiculous. And I love the idea that, it's once you say a number that's so big, one, you become quote unquote too big to fail in certain ways, right? Which is kind of one hilarious angle to it. It's we don't really have anything, but we're too big to fail. The other is that you're well, our valuation is $1 trillion. Well, that's nothing. What's the tiny, it's a very funny way to inflate numbers from my perspective.
So I agree with you, Sam, but I will straw man this for the sake of intellectual, conversation. You could also say that the history of the tech business has been thing that seems totally outlandish and reasonable kind of coming to fruition. Both, I remember when the idea of $1 trillion market cap company.
I remember 100 billion was a lot of money.
Yeah.
Look, I actually really take personal affront to this because I agree that there is that narrative, but I also think when people get into this whole thing, where there is no meaning and life is unfair and wealth is random and there's no hard work and it's totally lack of rigor, this plays right into that hand effectively in that version of tech, which is that it's all a house of cards when it really isn't, right? That's the thing about tech is there's really serious people doing really hard work, delivering really awesome stuff. And so when you have people roll around and do this absurdist capitalist thing, right? Candidly, all Sam Altman's doing is trying to one up Elon Musk
Completely.
in absurdism, right? Which is we're going to list that we can do self-driving cars a decade before we can, or we at least or we're going to Mars, even though we haven't solved 87% of the problems you'd need to go to Mars. There's this thing of there's a version which is very negative in my mind of tech, of leaders saying ridiculous, candidly ignorant things, right? And then hoping the world catches up with them, which I think is exactly why everyone hates tech. And really, actually, I think really buries a lot of really important, great work that goes on and discipline to actually getting to good answers. So I'm super negative this, but it is hilarious.
We're the lesses on it, but I'm curious, I don't know, dreamers over there. What do you think?
I am typically a dreamer, but this time around, I like Sam's moniker of absurdist. I also was reading a lot of the reactions, even from some of the top thinkers in AI and, university professors, et cetera. There are a ton of reactions, of course. And it's like, even in the plan, there's not enough natural resources to use the chips and like all of the things that is part of this plan. It's like not even possible, basically, and would diminish a lot of the other types of needs we have for all of these types of materials. And then lastly is, why are we're putting $7 trillion into something that might not even work or create a hazy future when we've got the world on fire, there's climate change, there's all kinds of other types of initiatives around the world that we could better be using money to solve.
The interesting thing about it,
it sounds like they might need a board and governance. Just maybe.
Yeah, no, I think they do.
I mean, you guys, the total outlay of the US government last year was somewhere in the ballpark of $6.5 trillion. And our total revenues were around $5 trillion. As we all know, there's like a constant debate about this like $1.5 trillion of debt, that we have. But I'm just putting into context the scale of the entire United States spending. And, our GDP is around, it's something like 25.
Wow, it's gone up since I checked.
Yeah. And so, you can ask this question. There's sort of two things. If you believe that this AI technology, LLMs or not, like the future AI technology is going to help us solve all the world's most important problems, take us to the promised land, then you can ask this bigger question, which is like, what percentage, like how many Americas are you willing to spend on that? Right? Like that's kind of the question that's being asked here, right?
Yeah.
Look, I think this goes back to the whole, like, just tipping the hat of like, we talked about this months ago, and it's the constant problem, which is OpenAI, is what's being built, or people thinking about this as a rational business growth that increases productivity and da-da-da, or is it a religion, right? When you're like, I want $7 trillion, right? Like that is the statement of a religious leader, not a disciplined business person.
I would like to spend one America, right?
It's just ridiculous.
And also, one of the ways I was trying to think through this was how many, like, what's the real ask here? Is it $7 trillion right now, or is it $1 trillion for the next 7 years? And then this question of like, what percentage of the US federal budget would you be willing to spend on AI security and ensuring that we have a defense spending?
I think, Dave, you're taking this too seriously. You're like assuming that this is like a rational, serious proposal being made. It's just ridiculous, right? And like you have to understand it as marketing, right?
Yeah.
Like,
so this is also where the press, let me bring you inside the press curtain here, tells you a lot about what's happening too. So for that number to have been published in the Wall Street Journal, someone had to confirm it. A lot of people had to confirm it.
Yeah.
Probably 2 people had to confirm it, and it had to be in the meetings and so forth, which means instead of, should a leader like Altman be trying to raise gobs of money to, lessen their dependence on NVIDIA? Sure. But clearly he and others think that this being out there is helping. And like, to your point, Sam, that's what tips it into something besides like good rational business, because even if that was the number, which obviously it's not, it's going to be in every bit of regulatory scrutiny you're going to get. Like, there's just no reason to have it out there. So to me,
it's so simple. It's like, oh, our company's only worth $100 billion, but it's 7 trillion. Like, it's just a relative number game to like hide the ball, basically.
But I also think you can tell a lot about the people and the leaders by what they say and what they also bless and sanction, as well as what they talk about in sort of the semi-public circles, which is how these things get leaked. And I think that's very interesting. And it was good for the Journal for getting on detail. I think there should have been more pushback in the story.
So really what you guys are all saying is that this and the Vision Pro versus the Quest, all of it is just the further world wrestling of everything in the public sphere.
But these are very different. Like, this is a very specific new category that you can debate, on what consumer adoption is going to look like. You can debate if it's going to be profitable. You can debate how it's going to be money or whatever. But like, you put it on your face and there's like something new. I think the problem of business leaders, again, saying we're going to be in Mars in 2 years, or we're going to raise $7 trillion. I mean, I agree with Sam that it just kind of like gives a bad name to all the people out there, the critics of tech. And I understand the historical thinking as like, we need to rally people. We need to show them what's possible. We need to, and, you know, people like Elon have built legitimately amazing products and things, but it feels unhinged at this moment.
Yeah, and deeply unhinged and deeply religiously unhinged, right? Like,
you like
now
that
I'm going to do my disclaimer. Ready for my disclaimer? This has nothing to do with effective altruism.
Good. I was like, which disclaimer are we going into?
That's the disclaimer. Whenever I say deeply unhinged religion, I have to say,
I have one question for you, which is, can we get a status on the tree?
Okay.
What tree? What are we talking about?
We need a narrow. All right, let me explain. I opened the episode asking about the tree. And for all of you that hung in there with us through this crazy episode, let me explain. Jess and Sam were so kind to invite us over to their home this past weekend. It was a beautiful day. The kids were having fun, swimming. And then I turned to my right. And guess what's happening? Sam and Dave are sitting in an ATV with a piece of rope tied to the front.
It was a winch. It was way more than a rope. Yeah.
All right, a winch. I wasn't sure. Tied to a tree and then tied to the ATV. And they were driving forward and driving backward and driving forward and driving backward. And their goal was to tear down the tree because Sam said it was ugly and he didn't want it in the yard anymore. And
no,
then,
to be fair, it's a dead tree.
It's a dead tree.
It's dead.
We're not killing anything living.
Okay, it's a dead tree.
This is a fully dead
tree. It's winter. You never know.
No.
So then they get the axes out. Then they start axing away, and there's like strategizing, like which limbs should we take out? It's like all these physics conversations are happening, and literally an hour later, maybe longer, they finally get the tree down. And they were so proud of themselves. And Jess and I look at each other, and Jess says,
"Slow clap."
Well, now I've got to pay somebody to come pick up the dead tree.
I'm glad you guys did it. And I just like the record to show that, you know, tech people can sometimes get their hands dirty and get the work done.
A lot of hard work.
We also are happy to report.
You know how many dead trees I can cut down for $7 trillion?
Sam also saved the plane that one of our children took and crashed in a tree from one of your children. So we're also happy to report that one ladder and one broomstick later, you know, all is well on the farm. So I'm glad we got that update out of the way. Thank you to everyone who stuck with us. What interesting times, folks. I mean, we're only in February and there's so much happening. So big thanks to our back channel, to everyone for sharing the pod, recommend it, tweet it, thread it, whatever. And yeah, we'll see y'all back here next week for another episode of More or Less. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
See you guys.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this show, please leave us a virtual high five by rating it and reviewing it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Find more information about each episode in the show notes and follow us on social media by searching for @MoreOrLess, @DaveMorin, @Lesson, @JLesson, and as for me, I'm @Brit. See you guys next time.